Hello, hi, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Heather Corinne, and today we're going to be crocheting this adorable beginner baby blanket. This is a visual tool to go along with the written pattern that can be found on my blog. I'll post a link to that in the description below. I'll also post a link to all of the materials and stitches we'll be using. We're going to be using Bernat blanket yarn. I've used two different colors of this yarn and it's absolutely gorgeous, especially for beginner patterns, so you don't have to change colors throughout. The measurements are approximately 30 by 32 once we've finished this pattern, but today we're just going to be doing a small swatch so that you can see the techniques used to create this baby blanket. We're going to be using the basic stitches of single crochet and half double crochet to make this entire blanket, which makes it perfect to crochet and watch Netflix, which is one of my favorite things to do. This yarn is the color Making Waves in the Bernat Blanket Twist. I'm just using the leftover from my blanket to show you a small swatch of how it's created. So we're going to place a slip knot on our hook. And then we're going to chain 61 chain stitches. I'm going to be chaining 11 stitches for my smaller swatch, but the full blanket requires 61 chain stitches. So I'm going to be working in increments of 10, so I've chained that 11th stitch, and here is going to be the bottom base beginning of our blanket. So you're going to chain 61 of these, and then we'll move on to row 1. Row 1, we're going to single crochet in each stitch across. So that's insert the hook, yarn over, pull up, and then yarn over, pull through both loops. And a trick I like to use to keep my place is to put a stitch marker in the first stitch of each row. That lets me know at the end of each row which is going to be my last stitch. If you like to keep up with your stitch count for the entire pattern, that is fine. I just don't want to count 60 stitches every time, so I place that stitch marker in the first stitch of this row. Now I'm going to continue on single crocheting in each stitch across until I have 10 stitches, but you should have 60 stitches. So here we are after our last stitch. This makes the beginning of our blanket. I should have 10 stitches and you should have 60 stitches. This is going to be the bottom base, and we're going to move on to our half double crochet. So we're going to chain 1 and then turn the work around. So from now until the end of the pattern, we're going to be working into the back loop only. So you can see the loop closest to you is the front loop, and the loop on the back side is what we're going to be crocheting into, and that's the back loop. So we're going to yarn over, insert the hook into the back loop, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops, and that is a half double crochet. I'm going to get another stitch marker and mark this first stitch on this row. And then we're going to continue placing half double crochet in each stitch across in that back loop only until we've reached the end of this row. The stitch count will remain at 60. Mine will remain at 10. Now you can see why I like to place this stitch marker in the last stitch, so that way I know when I have reached the end of this row without having to count my stitches. So after this last stitch, I'm going to remove this stitch marker so that I can use it for the next row. And you can see how that half double crochet in the back loop creates a nice little ridge or texture for this blanket, and alternating back and forth every row on the back stitch just makes this really nice patterned texture without us actually having to change up our stitches. So at the end of each row, we're going to chain one and turn the work around. And now we're just going to continue to half double crochet in the back loop only for the next, well, I don't say the next amount of rows until we've reached the end of row 41. So here we are on row 3, and we're going to continue to repeat this over and over until we've reached the end of row 41. I'm going to show you just a couple more rows so that you get the idea of what the finished product should look like. And then I'm also going to show you the ending row. But you can see by how quickly just these 3 rows have created an actual decent amount of work, how quickly this blanket actually works up. So I made a whole one of these blankets in the car on the way to the beach one day. You'll notice how I keep popping the stitch marker out at the end of each row and then placing it back at the beginning of each row so that my stitch count stays consistent throughout. And we're also getting a nice ridged pattern now that we've placed a couple of rows with that back loop only. If you're enjoying this tutorial, please take a moment to give this video a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. Your support allows me to continue creating these free patterns and tutorials for you, so I really appreciate it. So here I've finished my last row of half double crochet, so you'll be on your 41st row at the end, and we're going to finish this off by adding another row of single crochet so that the top will match the bottom. So I've turned the work and I'm on the beginning of row 42, and I'm just going to place a single crochet in each stitch using the front and back loop. So previously we were using just the back loop. Now we're going to be going through both loops to create a single crochet in each stitch all the way across. At the end of row 42, we're going to chain 1 and we're going to pop these stitch markers out. And this is going to be the end of creating our blanket. So now we'll trim the tail with just a long enough tail to be able to weave in the ends. And we'll pull through that chain 1 stitch to secure it. Next, we'll take our handy dandy tapestry needle, and I'll show you how I like to weave in these ends on these bulky patterns. So you can see how nice that texture is and how adorable this blanket turned out. To weave in these ends, we're just going to thread our tapestry needle. And we're going to strategically run this tail through several stitches on one side. We'll turn and skip this first stitch and go back through those same stitches. Typically this would be it, but since this yarn is so bulky, I don't want it to come unraveled, so I'm going to repeat and go back down the opposite direction before trimming off the end of this tail. And you can see that using this method of weaving in the ends ensures that it doesn't come out and you can't tell where the tail was. So I'm just going to repeat this on the other side. And this completes our beginner baby blanket. I just love how these turned out with the texture and the color as well as how quick they are. Thanks so much for creating with me today. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you very soon with a new fun project. Don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching.